So, what I wanted to share was a little bit of a discussion about something that people in the lucid dreaming world call dream mapping, and this probably isn't very well known in parts of the lucid dreaming world because it kind of comes from a shamanic tradition. At least that's how it was explained to me. And the first person who explained it to me was actually a Ukrainian lucid dreamer. He asked me if here in the North America did we do dream mapping, and I told him I really wasn't sure what he was talking. So I asked him to explain to me what dream mapping is, and then how it would connect to lucid dreaming. And so he said a shaman in Ukraine or Russia had taught him about dream mapping, he and his friends. And basically, what he did was this: he got a grid of paper. And so here's a honeycomb grid. And he made the very center of it home base. And then, whenever he'd have a dream, he would mark where did home base seem from where he was located in the dream. And so sometimes it was just kind of a guess or a feeling like, oh, I'm way down here in the south and the home feels like it's just due north of me. Or maybe I'm way over here in the southeast quadrant and I feel like I'm about in this grid. And so he would write down the dream and where it was located, he felt in the dream. So I think you can kind of get the sense of after you do this for a couple of months, all of a sudden your grid starts to fill out. In some dreams, you're up here in the north, and some dreams you're in the west, and some dreams you're in the east, and some dreams you're in the south. And then what starts to happen is this: you develop the mental habit when you're in the dream state to ask yourself, where am I? What was I? How did I get here? Which way is home? So you can see how just by virtue of dream mapping, you begin this mental exercise of being aware of your environment, of your space. And so, because of that, all of a sudden, you begin to have lucid dreams. Because what will happen, you'll find yourself somewhere and you'll be thinking, okay, which way is home? And then you'll look around and you go, wait a second, I've been here before. This is the rail yard where all the freight trains are. Oh, I remember this because of the dream 2 weeks ago. Oh, I'm dreaming now. This is a dream. And you'd become lucid because you'd find yourself back in that dream space and wondering which way is home and looking around to kind of critically examine your environment. So you can see how after a while, this would be a way of developing a lucid dreaming practice. So it would help you become lucid as you look around and try to figure out where you are and which way is home. So it gets more deeper than that. Remember, this is an old shamanic practice. And in the shamanic view of things, there's the upper world, the middle world, and the lower world. And what these practitioners of dream mapping discovered was this. They found that some places, once they became lucid within the dream, there would be a portal. And some of the portals went down into the lower world according to their viewpoint. And other quadrants or other grid points took them up into what you might call a higher dimensional world or a higher level. So again, sometimes they'd become lucid. They'd go, wow, there's that same building again. And then they'd think, oh yeah, that was the building that seemed like it had a portal, a doorway, a chute into a different realm. And they would move into that space. There's the special doorway. They go through it and boom, they're now in a different dimensional realm. So that's how dream mapping can even take you, according to shamanic dreamers at least, into a different dimensional situation. Or it can remind you where the portals are within the lucid dream so that you can go elsewhere. So the beauty of this And the value of dream mapping is you begin to pay attention to where you are when dreaming. And after a while, you begin to remember, wait, I remember this dream space. I was here last week. Oh, yeah, this is a dream. I'm dreaming this. And it helps a person become lucid. Also, once you become lucid, you can begin to explore things, discover hidden things like portals or wormholes, find out where interesting dream figures are, and that kind of thing. It can kind of begin to expand the dimensionality of lucid dreams. Not only is there the space you're in right at that moment, but you also begin to realize, oh, there's other spaces that I can enter if I find the right way to enter that lucid dream. So that dimension within the lucid dream. So that's basically kind of the basics of dream mapping. It's one of these practices that if you're disciplined and don't mind working with it, um, for some people within a few weeks, it'll help them have lucid dreams. For some people working with it consistently within a couple months, it'll help them have lucid dreams. But again, sometimes it helps if you have a belief system that supports kind of a shamanic viewpoint of dreaming or lucid dreaming, and you can take it from there. So now we're going to open it up for questions. And again, if you ever want to reach out to me, you can always go to lucidadvice.com, or you can go to worldofluciddreaming.com, and on their Facebook page, ask a question or share an experience. I also wanted to encourage people, if they would be so kind, if you have some interesting lucid dreams or have an interesting lucid dream article, feel free to share it to the free online magazine that I co-edit called Lucid Dreaming Experience. You can go and read the last 10 years of magazines there for free. You don't even have to sign up, just click past issues and keep reading. But if you go to luciddreamingmagazine.com, we do have a place for people to submit lucid dreams. And so if you want to see your lucid dream in print or online forever, you can go there. So feel free to submit there and take advantage of this resource. I know for myself, reading the Lucid Dreaming Experience magazine prompted me to have a number of lucid dreams, because I would read something that somebody had submitted and I'd think, no, you can't do that. Can you really do that in a lucid dream? And then later I'd have a lucid dream exactly around that issue that someone had brought up that I thought was probably impossible. And so that's the beautiful thing about sharing lucid dreams today. So again, we're at that point where you can ask questions or share experiences. And here's some from David, who dropped them in the chat. So I'm just going to read it off here. I'm slowly seeing results to the lucid dream affirmation I say before sleep. I had a dream where I saw my hand, but it was skinless and had been cooked. Looked similar to chicken. In fact, I was eating it with a knife and fork. It was very strange and sadly didn't make me completely lucid, but the dream did wake me up. Okay, that's a good one. But here's a question that David has. Is working on healing the parts of yourself in a lucid dream similar to the concept of the internal family systems as practiced by psychotherapy? It seems to me lucid dreaming would be much more effective. And so that's a wonderful question. So I'm not super familiar with internal family systems. What I seem to recall, and maybe I have this right or wrong, David, you can put in the chat here, but it's like let's say you're at a workshop and suddenly you were the person, and now you have 4 people in your family and your actual family, but you pull members of the audience out to represent those members of your family, and then you put them around the stage relative to you. So if you're not very close to your father, well, maybe your father is way off in the corner. And if you're really close to your little sister, maybe your little sister is just 2 feet away from you. and you begin to kind of see your relationship to them in this space. And in that way, you begin to get some insights as to why dad is way over there and why mom is behind little sister, and all these kind of dynamics. But in a lucid dream, you can begin to heal yourself. And so here's the way that someone would begin possibly a process of healing in a lucid dream. So I think we've all had dreams of being chased. We're doing something and then someone's coming. Sometimes we see them, sometimes we just feel them, but now we're running to get away from the angry man or the aggressive person or whatever it is. We're being chased. And so sometimes that kind of becomes a nightmarish kind of scenario. But what I've found is that oftentimes I've heard Carl Jung brought up this idea that everyone has a shadow, and that's the denied parts of the self or the ignored or repressed parts of the self. And oftentimes we put them in the shadows position right behind us because we're not facing them. We're not looking at them. We're not thinking about them. We're just doing our best to ignore and deny them. And so all that energy has to go someplace, and so it goes behind you. And so sometimes in lucid dreams, if I found myself being chased, I think, wait a second, I know this is a dream. And so what I do at that moment, I turn around and face whoever or whatever is chasing me. And I'll ask them an open-ended question like, who are you? Or what do you represent? And oftentimes when you do that in a lucid dream, suddenly the figure will stop and it'll say exactly what it represents or exactly who it is. And so that's really important to know because at that moment, you know what you're dealing with. Is it your fear of success? Is it your fear of failure? Is it you're being chased by the anger at your boss that you really can't express? And so you deny it and ignore it and keep working. And now there it is. So once you know what you're facing and you've asked it, who are you or what do you represent and heard it, then here's what I normally do. I send it what it lacks. So if it's full of hate, I send it from my heart, I send it love. If it's a little kid who feels ignored and wants attention, from my heart, I send it all the attention and compassion that I can send it. And I'll tell you what happens when you do that. When you actively send love or compassion or understanding or acceptance to these aggressive dream figures, all of a sudden they'll begin to get smaller. They get smaller and smaller and smaller. And if you totally accept them, then they'll burst into light. And normally that light will come back into you because it's actually a projection of your energy. And so once you collapse that symbol, where does it go? It goes back into the projector. You're the projector in the lucid dream. So again, I always try to find out first who's chasing me. And normally just by understanding that, I'll send it what it lacks. And then it'll begin to change. And that's one way that you can begin to do emotional healing. Now, I work with a woman who helps me sometimes do workshops online. Her name is Jillian. And one reason I like working with her is that when she was in high school, she developed kind of generalized anxiety. And because of that, she would occasionally have panic attacks. And so I think she went to see a doctor, psychiatrist, and they began to give her medications and all that kind of stuff. But in lucid dreams, she would see the same thing. She would see whenever she began to focus on something negative, it became bigger. And when she ever expected that thing to get even worse, it got worse. And so she began to see how her beliefs and expectation and focus could create a lucid nightmare. But she also saw that using her beliefs, expectation, focus better could lead to an unwinding of that situation and then lead to a lot of joy and happiness in the lucid dream. And so then she did a practice that we call lucid living. She transferred what she was learning in the lucid dream into the waking state. And she began, whenever in the waking state, she began to worry about something, she began to treat it like a lucid dream and said, and would think, instead of, oh my God, this is going to get worse and it's going to get bad and I'm going to be horrified, instead she would flip it around at, oh, this is immediately going to get better. Oh, I know this is going to, resolve itself really quickly. Oh, I know this is going to end up fun. And she found that by acting like it was a lucid dream and using her mind thoughtfully, she was suddenly able to reduce her anxiety or panic attacks considerably. And so there's a lot of different ways that you could use this practice in order to change your mind, change your mental state, change your emotional state. I did want to say that I have written some books. My first book, Lucid Dreaming, Gateway to the Inner Self, has a chapter on healing in there. In the second book, Lucid Dreaming, Plain and Simple, with my co-author, Caroline McCready, we get into some of the practices around how some people have used lucid dreaming for emotional healing. And so there you get a better sense of how a person could go about it. Anyway, I'm going to talk with Bruce here, and then we'll get back to the chat room. Hi, Bruce.
Hey, Robert. Uh, I completely resonate with what you just said there. I read a book recently where it spoke to the way he termed it was the personification of life's problems, where just as your example cited there, speaking to whatever it is, whether it's a migraine headache, a pain in the knee or whatever, and flipping it around. It's quite an interesting book, but having just recently read that, I completely agree with that, with sort of personifying whatever it is, whether it's a bad character in a dream or, a situation in the three-dimensional life we live.
Right. And Bruce, I think that might be one of the basically undiscovered purposes of dreaming. We can, in a sense, meet unresolved emotional issues and potentially resolve them in the dream state. And so, we can resolve fears, we can resolve concerns, we can resolve quandaries that we can't figure out in the waking world. But in the dream state, all of a sudden, we have that ability to look through the situation and see it as it really is and go, oh, now I understand how I could resolve this by changing my mind.
Yeah, totally agree.
Great, great. Anything else you want to add, Bruce?
Uh, Only that I guess in my own case, uh, I haven't been practicing that long, maybe a year or two, uh, along with meditation seriously over that time. But it seems as though I've had one or two recurring kind of theme dreams where there's slight variation in the dream, but the theme is the same thing. And those seem to be resolving uh, with progress over the last couple of years,
Oh,
which to your point, I tend to agree. You can resolve all kinds of things, and it's quite interesting.
yeah, no, it really is. I don't think that larger society understands how you can resolve some things in the dream state quite easily. But if you focus and begin to understand it and use dreaming, you can indeed resolve personal issues, emotional issues, and all that kind of thing. You know, I want to thank you for sharing a little bit of your story and just wish you luck with that. So thanks, Bruce.
Thanks much, Robert. Appreciate it.
Okay. I'm going to go to the chat and just wanted to mention something here. David went on to say that the internal family system is based on when we have that we have three parts of ourselves that represent ourselves. The parts are exiles, which represent psychological trauma, often from childhood, managers, which take on preemptive protective role. They influence the way a person interacts with the external world. Firefighters that emerge when exiles break out and demand attention. They work to divert attention away from the exiles' hurt and shame. So anyway, so that's David's quick explanation of the internal family system. And so there's probably a lot more to that obviously I don't understand because I had a different concept in mind. But here's what I would say: the part of the beauty of lucid dreaming is this: when you ask that figure, what do you represent? And and you learn from it what it represents, suddenly you realize that sometimes it's something outside of these three categories or eight categories or 10 categories. You get down to the nitty gritty of what it is. And oftentimes, just by knowing that, just by having that insight, you go, oh, I do have an issue with that in my waking life. And so now I'm going to send it the love, understanding, attention, acceptance, whatever it is, and begin to resolve it right then and there. And I'll tell you what happens if you completely accept it and it bursts into light and some of that light or all of the light comes into you, you'll wake up feeling like a different person. Energetically, you'll wake up feeling like a different person. So it's not like you have to wait for the change to occur. It almost happens instantaneously in the lucid dream and helps. So thanks David for that clarification. Um, so we're going to a question that Tormod brought up. He goes, "Hi Robert, thanks for talking about this. Do you see a way to combine the dream mapping technique with some action to do while going into hypnagogia?" Well, so hypnagogia, for people who might not be aware, normally gets translated as the gateway into sleep. And so imagine some nights you're beginning to fall asleep, and suddenly in front of your eyes you're seeing bits of color float around, and like blobs of color float around, and so that's what you would call a hypnagogic situation. Or sometimes you might find yourself hearing voices, people having a conversation, as you're falling asleep. So these are kind of hypnagogic situations. Um, I'll tell you what I do in hypnagogia when I notice that state. I began to notice. So I'm one of those people who would normally see colors of light floating around, different colors floating around and moving around. And what I began to think was this: that somehow the colors were connected to my thought processing at the time. And so then I thought, okay, I'm going to check this by quieting my thoughts, getting really peaceful and relaxed while I observed all these moving lights all over. And I'll tell you what finally happened. It took about a minute or two, but finally I quieted my thoughts so much that suddenly there was just one color, just one color there in my hypnagogia. And so sometimes I think those colors kind of represent different conflicting thought energies, or not necessarily conflicting thought energies, but different types of thought energies that are kind of floating around in this mental space represented by colors. And if you quiet your mind or focus on just one thing, then one predominant color will appear. I don't know if you could really use a dream mapping technique with some action during hypnagogia. Possibly, but boy, I haven't heard of anyone doing that, so I can't really say that. Someone loves sunny days wrote, "What are some things I can do during the day to stay in a lucid mindset?" Okay, so a lucid mindset is a mindset that's more aware, that you're not only aware of what's going on out there, but you're also aware of your mental thought processes because sometimes they may or may not connect with what's going on out there. So, so in my books, I've written how at one stage I developed a technique called basically developing a lucid mindset, and after a while, I started to have 30 lucid dreams a month. So some nights I'd have two or three lucid dreams and whatever, but it got up to about 30 a month. And so here's how I developed a lucid mindset. I began to become critically aware of things that were happening around me. So I developed this idea from reading the books of Jane Roberts, the Seth material, that somehow the events that happened that I would witness was somehow connected to me, either my beliefs or my expectations or my emotions or thought or focus or whatever. And so in during the daytime, whenever anything strange happened, I would stop and I would say, wait a second, what attracted that event into my life? What beliefs, thoughts, emotions, ideas do I have that brought that event into my life? And I would sit there and really think about it. And so maybe five, six times a day, something strange would happen. And it wouldn't have to be really strange. I mean, it could be just a kid walking down the sidewalk who suddenly gives me a big smile. I mean, that's how strange it could be, just something kind of normal like that. But I'd stop and think, why did that happen? What brought that into my personal experience? And so then what happened after I began this process in the waking state of being more mindfully aware of my experience and wondering why is that happening? Then in dreams, I'd be going along in a dream. I didn't realize it was a dream. I'd just be going along. And then something strange would happen. And I'd go, wait a second. Why did that happen to me? What beliefs, expectation, focus, intent do I have that would bring that into my life? And then I'd realize, wait a second, that's way too strange. A camel, walking down the middle of the street in the middle of America, that's way too weird. Oh, this has to be a dream. And I'd become lucidly aware. So, so in terms of your question, what are some things I can do during the day to stay in a lucid mindset? You have to develop a system where you question your daytime experience. So for me, I had this idea that what I was experiencing was somehow connected to my beliefs, thoughts, emotions, expectations. And so whenever I saw anything weird, I'd ask myself, why did I attract that into my life? But you might not like this idea. But what you've got to do to stay in a lucid mindset is to have some practice that throughout the day, something prompts you to be critically aware. And it could be, where am I right now? How did I get here? Where am I right now? How did I get here? Oh, yeah, this is my home. I live here and blah, blah, blah. But if you do that over and over during the days, then you'll find yourself in the dream state. Wait a second, where is this place? How did I get here? Then you look around and you think, I don't live in Paris. Oh gosh, this is a dream. That's the only way that explains it. So, so that's what you got to do. Love sunny days, and so good luck with that. So I'm going to take it over to Paul now and have Paul unmute.
Hi, David. How you doing? Robert.
Hey, doing good, Paul.
This is sort of a vanilla question. It sort of came to mind as you described this mapping technique. Like 3 or 4 nights in a row, I was having these elevator dreams, and they were really bizarre. Like, for instance, in one, I went up in an elevator and I was like 13 or 14 stories, and it opened up onto like a construction site. And I said, well, I have to get out of here. I don't really feel comfortable being this high up. And in another one, the elevator would take me up and I would have to get off and get on another one to go to another place. What made me think of it when you talked about the dream mapping is in two of these dreams, um, there was like an alleyway. And as I reflect back, this alleyway had something to do with the house that I grew up in as a child. And the other thought I had when I thought about it was related to a hospital building where I worked for a while. So there was sort of that connection, that kind of portal. What do you think about that?
Where I grew up, we had an alley. And it's interesting to me, the alley is kind of the backside, the unseen side
Hmm.
of the fronts of the houses. You go down the street, you see the front of the house, everything looks great, people mow their lawns and all that kind of stuff. The alley, you go through the alley and now you see the backside, you see the trash, you see all the other stuff. And so first, when it comes to me, I've had a lot of elevator dreams and lucid dreams. And oftentimes for me, an elevator or escalator or even stairways is about changing my level of awareness. I'm moving up. And sometimes it's interesting, the stairways, instead of being typical stairways, they're kind of corkscrew stairways that
Mhm.
keep you going higher. So whenever I find myself in an elevator, oftentimes I think, wait a second, this has to do with shifting my level of consciousness. And sometimes that's enough just to make me get lucidly aware because I'll
Hmm.
think of that. But I think also the alley might have to do with kind of, okay, if elevators have to do with shifting levels of awareness, alleys might have to do with kind of the unseen way of getting around a dimensional space. It's kind of like the back channel way. The traditional way is the front street. The back channel way is kind of the alley. But also an alley, it just kind of depends. Your alley might be different than my alley. My alley was normally pretty fun, and us kids would play around.
Hmm.
Other people's alleys, are dangerous places where you get mugged and put out the trash and all sorts of stuff. And so it's going to vary according to each person's
Hmm.
symbolism.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. Interesting. Also, I like this idea of going from one elevator to get to another elevator.
Yeah,
That
it was really weird because I'd go up and then I don't know how this happened, but it's sort of like I would wind up in a staircase and I had to get in another elevator to go down to another floor to get to another vent. I'm like, what's this all about? Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like if nothing else, you're doing some exploring levels of consciousness. So good luck with that.
Thank you.
Okay, now I'm going to go back to the chat, and here we have Carrie. Uh, writes, lately I've had three dreams where a dream character turns to me and say it's time to wake up, and then counts down my alarm clock going off. The dream characters can tell I am lucid, but I cannot seem to turn the tables and start asking them big questions. How do I get myself to feel empowered to ask the dream characters questions about reality? I've told them in any dreams that I know I'm dreaming, and they react like it's so cute that I say this, and then they dismiss me. Thank you. So, so Carrie, one thing I write about in my books is that all dream figures vary. Some dream figures, when you become lucidly aware, you ask them a question, and and they're not able to respond. Other times they respond with gibberish. Other times you'll meet a dream character who responds with real depth and thought. And so you have to realize that all dream figures are not created equal. And so you should probably look for dream figures who seem more aware, more cognizant, seem to be more lively. Sometimes they seem to be kind of independent. They have their own agenda that they're trying to achieve. And those are the ones that I kind of focus on. And then there's special dream figures like deceased loved ones and people wearing robes and all. And if you become lucid and see those, then I'd definitely go over and ask them, why are you here? Or what do you have to say to me? And that kind of thing. So, so anyway, one thing that I encourage people not to do is this. Don't go up to a dream figure and say, do you know I'm dreaming you? Because oftentimes I have seen this, I did this probably 10 times before I realized it was a stupid question. Uh, Normally, the dream figure would look so disappointed, like, you are the stupidest lucid dreamer out there. And a lot of other lucid dreamers have reported the same thing. If you ask them, do you know I'm dreaming you? Sometimes I remember one friend told me that the dream figure replied, how do you know I'm not dreaming you? And then that dream figure or the lucid dreamer said, well, look, I can fly. And then the dream figure said, well, look, I can fly too. And so again, you get into these kind of situations where you really wonder whose lucid dream it is. So what I would say is, you know, the best question to ask him is this: who are you? What do you represent? Find out what you're interacting with. And once you know that, then you'll know how to proceed. Without knowing who they are, then you really don't know how to proceed. So that's a good place for anyone to start. So I see Love Sunny Days has his hand up or her hand up, and so go for it.
Hello.
Hey there.
Oh, just the last dream you were talking about, or the last question you were reading from the lady, made me realize something about a dream I had a few days ago. I don't have my book on me, but it just prompted the question of so what happened in the dream is I was practically like being chased by these scary movie villains like Michael Myers and Jason. I was being chased down these hallways, right? And there's a dream character that like stopped me and told me that I didn't have to run anymore as I was being chased. So I was like kind of frantic and I was like, well, what should I do? And the character told me that I just should tell it bye, like say bye to it, like just tell it to leave me alone. And so I did that. And I remember that he just like left me alone. He just like turned around, walked down the other hallway. And it had made me want to go warn the other people that there's nothing to be afraid of. That just tell it to leave you alone and it will. But before I could go help other people, I had woke up and I wrote the dream down. But it made me think: Are is it possible that the dream characters could be as conscious or aware as much as you are, if not more than us?
You know, yeah. So dream figures do vary, and so on occasion you'll meet some dream figures who are really very aware. Um, like one time, I remember I became lucid and walked into a library. And because I was lucid, I was kind of playing around and I'd go up to every dream figure and I'd say, hey, do you want to go flying with me? Hey, do you want to go flying with me? And most of them would ignore me or shake their head no and tell me no. So finally, I'm walking through this library, and at the back of the library, I find this woman who's really studying. You can tell she's really intently studying something. And I walk up to her, lucidly aware, and I say, hey, do you want to go flying with me? And she looks at me for a second, and then she has this kind of twinkle in her eye, and she goes, sure. And suddenly, here's the weird part. She reaches over and grabs my arm and pulls me up, and we go shooting, flying out of the library. And I was like, whoa, whoa, because in a lucid dream, normally we think we're the one who is influencing everything. And to have this dream figure influence everything. And then what was interesting, she took me to the very top of the library, and then she stopped and she goes, I want to show you something. And so she made me look down, and I looked down through the library, which was now kind of like you could see through it. But at the very bottom of the library was what a Buddhist would call a yantra. So it's kind of a symbolic drawing of a mantra is a yantra. And half of the yantra was covered in dust and half of it was exposed. And when I woke up, I thought, there's no way in heck that I dreamt this up. I mean, she was showing me something that she wanted me to understand that there was something about this library and it had to do something. So you're right. Sometimes you meet a dream figure who seems to be more aware than you are, But a lot of times you'll meet dream figures who seem to have very little awareness or very little responsiveness.
Yeah, yeah, that experience is kind of like when I woke up, kind of gave me a sense of like comfortability, I guess, like kind of like of coming out of fear that maybe like these nightmares or whatever negative images that we have when we're dreaming aren't really negative. Like maybe they're like you were saying earlier about how, you're stressed from your job or whatever, so this is how you perceive it. So maybe there it's just imagery, a form of us manifesting how we feel and just how we deal with it.
Right. And so to get to your point, you know, dreaming and lucid dreaming can be really educational. Because when I learn what's chasing me and I think, oh crap, that's really accurate in waking life too. And then I go, oh crap, I want to resolve it right now because I don't want to deal with it. Like that dream figure told you, tell that other dream figure to leave you alone. And it's pretty much if you wish a dream, if you're being hassled by a dream figure and wish it peace, go, peace, man, stay cool. All
Yeah,
of a sudden, it'll leave you alone. It'll reflect that energy. But if you're afraid of the other dream figure, then it's kind of like a dog chasing you. As long as you run, it's going to keep chasing you. You know,
yeah, yeah.
but when you send
And
it peace, then it chills.
and I feel like that has so much in connection with like our physical life for like whatever we're experiencing, anxiety or depression. A lot of it is just our own perception of how we feel towards ourselves. So it's like if we can make peace with these things in our dreams, maybe we can find a way in this physical world to make peace with it inside ourselves. So
Yeah.
yeah, thank you, thank
Yeah.
you.
Oh, thanks. Great lucid dream. Thanks. Okay, gonna keep going down here. Uh, let me see. Okay. So Arlindo says, "Hey Robert, I have a question about precognition." And so Arlindo, I don't know if you want to show yourself or want to type some more and tell us what your question about precognition is. So that's good. Uh, so Maria K asked a question. I've never had a lucid dream, only spontaneous out of body experiences. Is this technique relevant for that too? And so so here's the thing um, that I would say. Um, a number of lucid dreaming techniques within the lucid dream can be easily transferred to the out of body experience. And in fact, some out of body people have been stunned by what lucid dreamers are doing, and then began to try to do that in the OBE state, and found some success with it. And occasionally, OBE folks will pass on some ideas to lucid dreamers that normally we haven't thought about. So, for example, in my book, my first book, Lucid Dreaming Gateway to the Inner Self, I have a chapter on people who have used lucid dreaming to heal their physical body. And and so it shows I give about a dozen successful examples of the lucid dreams where people had where they actually healed their physical body. And then I gave two or three examples of lucid dreams where people didn't have any healing, and you can see how different they were uh, by the successful examples, how they approached it with an attitude of doubt and distrust and all that kind of stuff. But then after that, out of body people who, like one time I was speaking in London and there's some out of body folks who were also on the panel, but they also began to explore this kind of thing of using the out of body state to affect the physical body. And so yeah, there's some back and forth. I think the beautiful thing about lucid dreaming is it gives you, in some sense, a broader perspective. when you talk to an out of body person, and so I'm painting with a very broad brush here, so excuse me for generalizing, but you ask them, what's the value of out of bodies to you? And they'll go, oh, it teaches me that I should have no fear of dying because I'll continue on after my physical death. And I say, okay, that's great, that's great. But when you look at lucid dreaming, in lucid dreaming, you can, if you're thoughtful and intelligent and all, you can see it how you can use lucid dreaming to access inner creativity. And I really mean profound inner creativity if you know how. You can use it for emotional healing. You can use it to promote physical healing. You can use it to engage um, another level of the self, your own inner self, your inner awareness. You can also use it for spiritual practices like meditating in a lucid dream. The capacity to use lucid dreaming to affect and support and develop your waking life experience is truly profound. And so that's why out of bodies are just fine. I've had my own out of bodies. They're just great, but I've kind of gone down the lucid dreaming path because there's so much more I feel that you can do with it. So that's my own personal viewpoint. I'm sure there'd be people who would disagree with me. So anyway, what are you? So Bruce asks, what are the techniques you are aware of to astral project from the lucid dreaming state? So that's a good question. I bring this up in my first book, Lucid Dreaming Gateway to the Inner Self. I spent about a half of a chapter explaining how lucid dreaming is different than the out of body state. They're similar, and they're similar just like a house cat is similar to a mountain lion. They're both in that feline family, but they're not exactly the same. I mean, people don't have mountain lions living at home with them. They get nice little fuzzy house cats. So anyway, there are ways to move from the lucid dream state into an out of body state. And so this is what I did in order to see about this. So I became lucidly aware. I remembered, oh yeah, I want to see if I can move into an out of body state. I didn't know if you could. I just thought it was probably possible. So I announced, and normally when I announce something, I'm announcing it to my larger awareness or my inner self. And I just stopped in the lucid dream, ignored all the dream figures, and said, now take me to the next form or take me to the next level. And boom, instantly, I found myself in the kitchen of the home that I was sleeping in. In fact, I found myself in the kitchen about where it'd be 5 or 6 feet under the bed that I was sleeping in on the second floor. And I looked out the window and I couldn't believe it. This is my bloody house and my bloody neighborhood. And so I flew out of the window and then I decided to go exploring the neighborhood. And I want to tell you that I learned things about the neighbors' houses as I flew through them and explored. And later, years later, when those houses went up on the market for sale and they'd have an open house, I was able to go inside the house and confirm that, yes, indeed, I saw things that structurally you'd never understand from looking of the outside of the house, that I'd seen them in my out of body state. But what I call the out of body, I call it a reality plus one environment because you're not seeing exactly how things are in the physical world. For example, one of the houses I wanted to explore, and so I put a window where there is no window in waking life. And I didn't put the window there consciously, I put it there subconsciously because it's easier to come in through a window. And so that's why I call the out of body environment a reality plus one, because your mental thinking actually can adjust that space, to make it more appealing at all. So that would be one way of answer Bruce's questions. How do you move, from the lucid state into an astral projection? Just announce, now let me go to the next form. And That's normally how I do it. Or now let me go to the astral form, or however you want to do it. One thing I'll say about all of these kinds of states of awareness, things turn on emotion sometimes. So let's say a person is intrigued by this idea of moving from a lucid dream into an out of body state, but they have a fear of it at the same time. They're curious, they want to explore it, but they have a fear of it at the same time. So what happens in those cases is that the fear might distort it. You know what I'm saying? So if you have fear or something like that, you got to realize your own state of awareness, because if you have fear, you're probably going to project a fearful aspect into it. But if you're okay with it or interested or just curious, you'll probably do fine. So I'm going to go to Arlindo now because he's been sitting there nicely waiting to get on. So Arlindo, welcome.
Oh, hi, Robert.
Hi.
Basically, I think I've told you before. I've been practicing lucid dreaming for over 15 years now, and I've had all sorts of experiences. And sometimes it's just a lucid dream from my own imagination. Sometimes it feels like I exit my body and I seem to see things which are objectively verifiable. But once I had this experience, which seems to have happened in the future. So basically, I was lying down trying to have a lucid dream, and suddenly I found myself floating outside of my window. So there was no perception of exiting my body. I was just floating outside of my window, overlooking my neighborhood, and then I saw something happening below me. I saw a bike, basically a bike, crash into one of the vehicles, which belonged to my neighbor. And I saw, in my experience, I saw my neighbor coming out of his house, and he was very angry, and he confronted the biker, right? And then suddenly I was back in my body, and I found it very strange. I thought, was this an OBE or was it a lucid dream? So I quickly went outside and I checked if there was an altercation going on, and there wasn't. Everything looked, like my neighborhood, but different. The cars were parked in different positions, and there wasn't a bike. There wasn't, there was no altercation basically. But I wrote it down anyways. 2 weeks later, the event from my experience actually took place. Someone crashed into my neighbor's vehicle, and he came outside the house. I didn't see it, but my other neighbors told me about this altercation. He came out, he confronted the biker, and I was astonished because it seemed to match my experience. And it makes me think, did I have a precognitive out of body experience? Because it seems like 2 weeks prior to the real event, I saw the actual event. I saw what was going to happen. And my question is, can we access that state of seeing future events, that precognitive state? Or does it happen by chance? Or perhaps there's something about reality which sometimes favors those conditions? I'm thinking about maybe something in nature to do with electromagnetic fields that allows our consciousness to go outside space and time.
Yeah,
I'm always curious about your thoughts.
yeah, no, good, congratulations on a great experience, and that later occurred in the waking world. So first, I want to kind of say this. How I got interested in dreaming as a little kid was because of precognitive dreams. I'd be in a dream and I'd hear somebody say a really strange phrase, you know, and then 5 hours later, I'd be out school playing with my friends over the lunch hour, and somebody would say that exact strange phrase. And I'd go, whoa, I just dreamt that, 5 hours earlier, and now someone's saying those really strange words. And so how does that happen? And so so at first I basically kind of thought as a little kid that, oh, God exists in a timeless realm. And so obviously, God knows everything. And occasionally you get some insight into, God, or all that is consciousness, and you see something that later turns to happen. But then later I realized that it might be a little bit, there might be other things at play here. So the first thing I want to say is this. Um, I believe that events in the future are probable. So, so sometimes we dream of things, but because something happens, you don't experience that reality because somebody changed their mind. Like the bicycle or the guy on the bike decided that day, oh, I should walk, or my bike needs gasoline or something, whatever. Anyway, so events are not necessarily predestined, but occasionally we do dream of them, but they're probabilities. And in my dream world, when I know that something is very, very likely to happen, normally I'll dream of railroad tracks because the train has to stay on the tracks. I mean, the train can't jump the tracks except in very rare occasions. And so whenever I see railroad tracks involved in the dream, I go, oh crap, there's a 99% chance this is going to happen because I see the railroad tracks here. Also, as a little kid, I'd oftentimes notice whenever a precognitive dream was, there'd be a clock in the background with the hands spinning wildly. And so that was a clue off that, hey, what's that clock doing there from the Twilight Zone? Oh, this is showing me that this is going to happen in the future. So pay attention and all. So here's the other issue about it. Sometimes we have the experience, but is it a literal experience or is it a symbolic experience? And so you can't, sometimes you have a symbolic version. Like here's an example. My wife and I were trying to sell our first house, and most of the other houses in the neighborhood had sold within 2 or 3 weeks, and there our house was still for sale. And so this is like June or something, or May, and that night I dreamt of seeing sold on the for sale sign, but then I heard in the distance, we live in a university town, I heard a football game, and they scored us. They scored, and so everyone in the football arena yelled. And I thought, oh my God! I woke up and I told my wife, I go, our house is going to sell, but it's going to sell during football season in the fall. We're going to wait all that time for the bloody thing to sell. And the weird thing was it sold like in October, November, and then here's the other weird thing. The people who moved into it, they decorated the house. They did something to the kitchen. They totally redid the kitchen and the house in a way that one day in my imagining, I imagined the house wanted to be. And it was like the house was waiting for the perfect couple who would turn it into the house that it wanted to be. It was the weirdest thing. It was really weird. So anyway, so again, so that was symbolic. That the house was. I was learning the house was going to be sold when the football season was around. So sometimes it's hard to know the symbolic and all, but you know, I it's interesting. Some people are really good at precognition, and some are really specializing in certain things like, family births and family deaths, or airplane disasters. I dreamt there was going to be an airplane disaster and it's going to happen in France and blah, blah, blah. And, the next day there's an airplane disaster. So
I
it
did
sounds,
stumble upon them.
yeah, so
Yeah,
it sounds like you really have a good ability in this area, and I'm so glad you're playing around with it too.
yes, thank you. Yeah, no, that's brilliant. It's always fascinating, isn't it? It seems like I don't really know what I'm doing. I'm just exploring other, you know, states of consciousness, and then I seem to stumble upon these experiences, and I'm left wondering, how the hell did that happen? How did I do it? Maybe I'm just receptive. I don't know, but it happens once in a while. It doesn't happen all the time.
Yeah, yeah, no,
But yeah, so that's why I was wondering. Yeah.
It's interesting. I'm going to make a plug for something. There's this organization called the Theosophical Society, and here in 2 or 3 months, I'm going to be giving a talk on the Theosophical Society. Uh, it, it's um, it's something that I developed. I call it patterns in precognitive dreaming, and it's kind of a way to figure out which dreams might have a precognitive element and which dreams probably don't, and how to work with precognitive dreams and all. So anyway, for
I'll
someone.
look forward to that one.
Yep, yep. Oh, good.
Thanks, Robert.
Good. Great to see you. Great to see you.
Good to see you too. Take care. Yeah.
Okay. And let me see what other things. So Maria writes this. She says, "I've never had lucid dreams, only spontaneous." Oh, and I'm sorry. She had brought this up. So Maria, I'm not sure what technique you were referring to exactly in that question. If you're talking about the technique of developing a lucid mindset, I don't know if that would be very good for out of bodies. Normally, the techniques of out of bodies that I've heard people talk about are the ones of like imagining yourself at the doorway as you're trying to fall asleep. There's a lot of out of body techniques, but that's not really the focus of my thoughts today. So again, we're kind of coming here to the end of questions, it looks like. If you have a question or an experience you want to share, feel free to raise your hand. Otherwise, I'm going to wait a month until the next first Thursday and we can meet again. I think we got some new messages here. Oh, David wrote, have you got any plans for more books or papers or taking part in research? I definitely am going to write some additional, at least one more book. My purpose in writing Lucid Dreams books was kind of to expand everyone's view of what was possible in lucid dreams, because I saw a lot of people just using lucid dreaming for fun, and they never saw all the great possibility and potential in it for other things. And so that's why I began writing books. And then I wrote the second book, Lucid Dreaming, Plain and Simple, talking about the technique of it and also the technique of how to work in the dream space. Because a lot of times people become lucid, but then they don't know what to do. And so you got to know what to do, how to do it, and the psychology of it if you're going to go deeper into lucid dreaming. But my third book would be about some of the surprising things that normally I don't talk about that developed in my lucid dreaming life and also in my waking life. And so, yes, David, sometimes I do hope to get that. Oh, okay. So Maria wrote, the topic was about dream mapping when I wrote the question. She's aware of the OBE techniques. Well, I don't know. In an OBE, if you had a lot of OBEs, could you ask yourself, I know you could ask yourself with the OBE, where is home base? And that's kind of focusing on the body and where it is. And then you might have a directional sense or a felt sense, or I'm on level 17 and home base is back on level 1 right there. So yeah, I've never heard of anyone using dream mapping with OBE mapping. So that'd be a good one. If you give it a try, Maria, I hope you'll let us know. So anyway. Well, good. Well, I'm going to cut it off there, everyone. Again, I did want to mention that I would be so thankful, especially for you lucid dreamers, if you wouldn't mind submitting a lucid dream to the online magazine, Lucid Dreaming Experience. All you have to do is go to luciddreamingmagazine.com and share your lucid dream. We have a submission button there. You don't have to use your real name. If you want to use a different name, you can do that. And And then also, I encourage people to check out the World of Lucid Dreaming forum. They're on Facebook, and also they have their own website. Occasionally, if you do have a question that comes to you tonight that you want to ask me, you might be able to submit it at the World of Lucid Dreaming site and ask. So anyway, again, thanks everyone for being part of today, and I'll look forward to seeing you the next first Thursday. That'll be first Thursday, March of 2025. Okay, adios.